morning.
Good morning.
Further reflect, we are back in session. Partisan counsel are present. All members of our jury, our alternates are present. Our witnesses, staff on the witness stand, Ms. Jones, you may resume your examination.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Williams. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you.
When we broke yesterday, we were about to switch topics, but I want to double back just a second. Remember the line of questioning about whether or not clothing items had been moved from the bathroom after you initial photographed it, and then there was a later photograph where they appeared to have been moved. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yes, I do.
And we talked a little bit about your sequential numbering and taking of photographs, correct?
Yes.
And I believe, just last question, a refresher, we had talked about an early photograph in like the 200 or 400 section versus one in the 600-700 sections, right?
Yes.
Okay. Before coming back to court this morning, did you have a chance to look back at the 700 and some odd photographs you took that day, February 19th, to see if that had occurred and why?
Yes, I did look.
Can you tell us what you found upon examining your 700 some odd photographs?
Yes, when I looked at them, I realized that after the initial photo, where the clothing had been on the counter and such, I had finished photoing and I finished photographing in the house. And then I, in between, had gone out and processed a vehicle, and then it was time to come back and start taking pictures of evidence items, and I took another photograph, probably to show what was going to happen with some other photographs.
I'm sorry, what was?
Probably when I took the photograph of the empty counter, I probably did it to show, because I was going to then put some items on the counter to photograph. But that was after the whole house had been photographed and the detectives had started their search.
So this would have been after the photography and after the detectives did the search. You're now going to photograph specific pieces of evidence?
Yes.
Did you see photographs of where you had taken photographs of specific items of evidence on that cleared counter?
Yes, I did.
For example, a couple of cameras that were found in the closet?
Camera bags.
Okay. And their contents?
Yes.
Okay. And that was done on the clear counter?
Yes.
Okay. And timing-wise, how much time had elapsed from the initial photograph, roughly, to when those evidentiary photographs were taken?
I think about 4 hours, maybe. 3 hours, 4 hours.
That would account a lot for the detectives doing their searching and possibly moving those items.
Yes.
So going back then, as part of this investigation, did you also have the opportunity to process a vehicle?
I did.
And what vehicle was that?
It was a Dodge Ram pickup truck in the driveway of the residence.
Okay, we talked about the truck yesterday. On a separate day, did you process another vehicle?
Yes.
What vehicle was that?
A 1996 Isuzu Trooper.
And was that the following day on the 20th?
Yes.
And where did that occur?
At the San Diego Sheriff's Crime Lab Vehicle Processing Garage.
I'm going to show you a series of photographs similar to what we did yesterday, and have you walk us through what you found and saw in the vehicle. Is that okay?
Yes.
But before I do, what is the process or the steps that you undertake in processing a vehicle?
It starts basically like a crime scene. It's sort of just a smaller crime scene. I take photographs from all angles, take photographs inside the way it looks at that time. And then the detective begins to go through what's in the vehicle, what we're going to collect, and take more photographs, and process some things if necessary. If I can process some right then, I'll do that.
What do you mean by process?
Process either possibly for latent prints, or for DNA swabs, or if I saw any suspicious stains in there, I could also swab those.
And did you follow that procedure in this case when you processed the Isuzu Trooper?
Yes.
So I'm going to start with exhibit number 141. Is this the Isuzu Trooper that you processed on the 20th?
Yes, it is.
And where is this picture taken at?
The San Diego Sheriff's Crime Lab Vehicle Processing Garage.
And this photo is of what side of the vehicle?
The right side.
Passenger side, right?
Yes.
Exhibit number 142 is what?
The front of the vehicle?
The writing on the window, is that common on vehicles that you process at the evidence garage?
Not so much. I think that's from the tow company, maybe.
So if a car has been towed, in your experience, a lot of times there's writing on the window such as that?
Yes.
Okay. You would not know whether that writing was on the vehicle prior to a tow or being seized as evidence? You wouldn't know that, would you?
No, I wouldn't, but when we have a tow truck attached to the crime lab, and when they tow a vehicle, they don't do that.
Okay. So if it was a private tow, that would be something consistent with that?
Yes.
Exhibit number 143, what are we looking at?
The left side, the driver's side of the trooper.
And exhibit number 144?
The back of the trooper.
Exhibit 145.
The front seat area of the trooper.
And are we looking from the passenger or driver's side?
From the passenger side.
146?
The passenger floorboard, front passenger floorboard.
147?
The driver's floorboard.
148?
The rear seat area
From which side?
from the driver's side.
149?
The rear seat area from the passenger side.
150?
The right rear passenger floorboard.
151?
The back hatch area.
The doors are now open?
Yes.
During the processing of the vehicle, you said you would potentially swab or do latent fingerprint development when you processed it, right?
Yes.
Would you do that before or after items were removed from the vehicle in inventory?
Well, for the vehicle itself, I would process probably before. For the items inside, I'd do it usually after, but I might do it as I went along if I was assigning them item numbers.
In this case, did you process parts of the vehicle itself for potential evidentiary purposes?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I processed for fingerprints in the vehicle.
Okay. Did you swab for any type of stains or DNA or anything like that?
Yes.
And where did you do that?
I did that I did it in the front seat area, and I did it on door handles and front and rear door handles.
Any other parts?
I don't think so. Could I refresh my memory?
Would it help to refresh your memory?
I think it would.
Do you have your report with you?
I do.
Okay, with the court's permission?
Sure.
Thank you. For the swabbing of the car, those were the areas. The steering wheel was one area. A kit from the gear shift and the four-wheel drive lever, radio controls, and the heater and air conditioning controls was another swab kit. And each of these items, by the way, when there's multiple items swabbed, it was with 2 swabs for that kit, even though that kit, do you want me to explain that? I had swabbed numerous items, like the radio, swabbing it, not the steering wheel, that was all by itself, but the four-wheel drive lever in the car, the gear shift, all of it together. And the steering wheel was by itself, 2 swabs to swab the steering wheel. Then another kit contained the driver's interior door handle plus the power window and door lock controls. And another kit contained the front passenger interior door handle and the power window and door lock controls. And another kit contained the left rear passenger interior door handle and power window controls. And the last kit was from the right rear interior door handle and power window controls.
You mentioned a kit. Describe for us what a kit is.
The kit is a manila envelope, and inside it there are 2 swabs contained and another little envelope that those can go into, and an evidence seal.
I'm holding, is that such an envelope?
That is.
Did you happen to bring this to court with you today?
I did.
For demonstrative purpose, if you can just maybe even stand and show the jury what that kit is and what it contains.
Okay, what it is just a manila envelope with a label on the outside. And because of the nature of swab kits, it can be used either as a stain collection kit for a random stain that we don't know what it is, and we're just collecting it, or a DNA swab kit if we're purposely swabbing an item that we want to see if it has DNA on it, or a reference oral swab kit, which is what we use for suspects, victims, witnesses to swab the inside of their cheek to get their DNA. And it's just a checkbox then for which kind of kit it is when we make it.
What other information is put on that label on the front of the envelope?
The case number, the item number, the date and time, where it was collected from, and who it was collected by.
And that is completed at the time of which the sample or swabbing is done?
Yes.
Okay. If you can demonstrate for the jury what's contained within the envelope.
All right. There's 2 swabs. Some things we might use both swabs for, or if there's just a teeny tiny little spot that we were questioning what it was, we might use just 1 swab. But we always have 2 in there to begin with. And there's, once they've been used, there's an envelope that they can go into. And then they're put back in the envelope, the bigger envelope, and sealed and initialed.
Is that all the kit contains?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with one of the swabs. Hold on for a second. I'm going to leave you with 1 swab. I'm going to ask to put these on overhead, so make sure everyone been able to see what you're referring to in a way that looks halfway organized. So if you can, by the way, when you begin the processing stage, you demonstrated here in court with your bare hands, are you doing that in the field?
No, I was just going to pull out the gloves.
So you would use what kind of gloves?
Latex or nitrile.
Okay. You seem to have come prepared today. Are you planning to take some swabs today?
Body gloves.
Okay. Can you demonstrate for the jury exactly how the swab is removed from the packaging and then used and then put back in the packaging?
Yes. And I also wanted to say, that I hadn't said before, it's not in the manila envelope, but we, depending on what kind of swabbing we're doing, we also use sterile water sometimes. So if I was collecting blood, a sample of blood from a pool of blood, I wouldn't need to use sterile water. But if there was a little dry spot on something, or if I was trying to swab for potential DNA on an item, I would put a drop of sterile water on it first.
Why sterile water as opposed to tap water?
Oh, who knows what's running around in that tap water, so sterile water.
Okay.
So, of course, we always blow up. And they really do come apart very easily. So these are sterile swabs, of course, to begin with. They're really nice because they have a little top on them that flips up. they have little holes, teeny, teeny, tiny little holes that allow them to breathe, so that after we put them away in that smaller envelope and seal it all up, it can still breathe and dry out. We don't have to set it on a drying stand with bunches of them in a room or anything. So this would be the swab. If I was going to use two, I'd have two in my hand at the same time.
Okay. For the record, you mentioned the plastic cap. That cap opens to expose the cotton part of the swab?
Yes.
And then
It goes back up.
I noticed it slid down the stick of the swab,
Yes.
and then it can go back up.
Yes.
And when you bring it back up, does a processor then reseal it?
Yes.
And in the case of processing, let's say, a reference oral swab, what would then be done with the exposed swab?
I'd be holding two in my hand while I did that,
Okay.
and I'd just be rubbing it inside the cheek, and then move over to the other side of the cheek, and then put them both back up, seal them, put them in that little envelope, put them in the bigger envelope.
Okay. And in the case of you're swabbing for DNA on an item of evidence such as a steering wheel or a door handle or a table, how would that occur?
I would have two of them in my hand, and at the same time, I would put a drop though of sterile water on each one of them, and then I would be rubbing them at the same time, like a little closer together, a nice little harder rub. And if it was a steering wheel, I'd be rubbing around, round, round, round on the back, anywhere where people normally hold their hands on the steering wheel, and then I would move it back up, both of them, snap it closed. Put it in the little envelope and put that in the bigger envelope.
Why do you use sterile water in that instance when you're rubbing on, let's say, a surface like a steering wheel or a table or something like that?
It'd be the same reason, because if it wasn't sterile water and it had some weird thing in it, I could be rubbing that on the steering wheel.
Okay. But why do you need why do you need
Water.
sterile water in the first place?
To sort of, if anything's like a little stain or anything, just to rehydrate it a little bit so that it will go onto the swab.
Is there any other steps of the process that I'm missing at this point of you resealed it, put it in the envelope, what else?
Then after it's in the little envelope, it goes into the big envelope, and when it's in the big envelope, it gets a seal on it, signed and dated.
Okay, you can resume your seat if you're more comfortable.
And the envelope is filled out. I've got one two to say what I swabbed.
Okay. And then what is done with the envelope once it's filled out, sealed? What do you do with it?
I take a photo of it, and then eventually it becomes impounded into the crime lab's property and evidence department.
Okay. And is that a secure location where those items of evidence are maintained until tested?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the process of transferring evidence from one agency to another?
Yes.
And can you tell us what that process entails?
It involves one agency or the other. Well, it has to be documented. It's been a long time since I've done that, and I'm not the one that did it in this case.
Okay.
But the steps they follow are just to take it off of the, say, our San Diego Sheriff's records. And it's all done real orderly and in a room where the people are so that they can sign off and sign on. And then it becomes their evidence.
And it's then physically delivered to them from your secure evidence to theirs?
Yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, evidence in this case was at some point handed over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, correct?
Yes.
Would that include your DNA swabs and any other evidence you collected?
Everything.
Everything. Okay. So if we go back to display attorney computer, was it 2? So I'm now going to show you exhibit number 152. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's a DNA swab kit.
4?
It's item number 5 for the steering wheel of the Isuzu Trooper.
Is that because you swabbed the steering wheel of the Isuzu Trooper for possible DNA with the process which you just demonstrated for the jury?
Yes.
And did you do that consistent with your training on how to collect DNA swabs?
Yes.
exhibit number 153. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's DNA swab kit item number 36, collected from the gear shift, the four-wheel drive lever, the radio controls, and the heater and air conditioning controls of the Isuzu Trooper.
And as with the previous kit, number 35, did you follow your training and experience in collecting that and consistent with it?
Yes.
And then exhibit number 154, what is that?
It's a DNA swab kit item number 37, from the driver's interior door handle, plus the power window and door lock controls from the Isuzu Trooper.
And again, did you collect that sample consistent with how you demonstrated it and described it today in court and in accordance with your training and experience?
Yes.
Exhibit number 155, what is that?
It's item number 38, a DNA swab kit collected from the front passenger interior door handle and the power window and door lock controls of the Isuzu Trooper.
And I knew I'd forget how I just phrased the last time I asked you this question. Did you do it consistent with your training and experience and as you demonstrated in court today?
Yes.
Exhibit number 156, do you recognize that?
Yes, it's item number 39, a DNA swab kit from the left rear passenger's interior door handle and power window controls of the Isuzu Trooper.
And again, collected and consistent with your training and experience in similar in fashion that you demonstrated here in court today.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk to you briefly about when you described swabbing multiple surfaces with a single sample or a single set of swabs. You mentioned the gear shift controller, air conditioner, like climate control stuff, radio. Why would you swab multiple surfaces like that with one set of swab as opposed to a separate swab for each of those areas?
Sometimes it's, if there's not a potential of a lot of DNA, it's with the hope that collecting from all those areas might concentrate it enough that there would be an identifiable sample.
And what do you mean by a surface that would not necessarily yield a large quantity or a good sample?
Well, the air conditioning controls, if somebody wasn't in that vehicle very long, they might not have even used them. Or the heater, they might not have used it. They probably used the gear shift. And probably not the four-wheel drive control, but maybe. And so some of those, you're just not sure. The steering wheel always seemed to me like a good one because it definitely uses steering wheel. So.
Does the size and surface, does the size of the objects that you're swabbing also affect what you, in your opinion, would be a good source of usable DNA?
Yes.
Describe that for us.
Well, because if something's small, it would depend. If it was small and it was a small knurled knob and you really had to struggle every time you turned that knurled knob, there might be DNA. But smaller areas are most likely to yield less if they themselves aren't producing the DNA.
Or something that maybe doesn't have to be torqued or tweaked and struggled with to manipulate as opposed to something that just easily moves?
Yes.
Do you also use some of your own judgment on like the frequency of use of that object in making a determination of how you go about swabbing?
Yes.
I think you mentioned, you know, someone may not touch a climate control thing, but they always would touch the steering wheel, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so there is a little bit of judgment in there whether you swab one thing on each swab versus a collection of things on a swab.
Yes.
Okay. And is that consistent with the training that you've received over the years?
Yes.
I'm going to move to items. Were items removed from the vehicle?
Yes.
And you inventoried those and photographed those, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to show you exhibit number 157. Do you recognize what's being depicted in that photograph?
Yes.
What is being depicted?
Those are items that were taken out of the front seat.
Okay. And is that, at least for the record, can you describe how it's laid out for us?
Yes, it's laid out with the stuff from the driver's side is on the left, the stuff from the passenger side is in the middle, and the stuff on the right side is from the glove box.
And that's labeled on, is that a piece of like butcher paper?
Yes.
And you labeled those areas in black ink on that butcher paper before you took the photograph?
Yes, with a Sharpie.
Looking specifically at items taken from the glove box, I'm showing you exhibit number 158. You recognize what's contained in that?
Yes.
And what is that document that is readily visible on the top with the lettering, red lettering of 2808364?
It's the trooper's car registration.
In the name of?
Joseph McStay.
And also the processing of the vehicle, did you attempt to lift or develop latent fingerprint evidence on any items?
Yes.
And do you recall what items those were?
Yes.
What was that?
There was a metal coffee cup in the front of the vehicle, in the front seat area, in the center console. And I also processed that fingerprint. And I also processed a glass water bottle that was in the console area.
Glass or plastic?
And just for clarification, is the witness referring to her notes to answer this question?
Yes.
Yes, she is referring to her.
I couldn't tell if she was thinking or reading.
Oh.
Does that help you refresh your recollection as the items you attempted to process for latent fingerprints?
Yes, it does.
Showing exhibit number 159, are those items?
Yes. I don't know why it does say glass, so, and specifically, let me see, open glass, it specifically says glass, so
Okay.
I don't know.
I can't tell from the photograph, and I'm going to have to rely on your recollection.
Yes, I don't have an independent recollection of whether there was glass or not, but I
Okay.
do say that.
Those are the items, though, depicted in photograph number 159.
Yes.
And they likewise are put on butcher paper with yellow placards, 41 and 42.
Yes.
And there's some writing there describing them, and it indicates, what does it indicate for us?
What it indicates, originally what I do is I set my numbered placards on the side so that as I process, as I collect an item of evidence, I can just take the next one, take the next one. But I did that with this, and I had forgotten that I had used envelopes, swab envelopes, for items number 35 and 36. And so I originally photographed these as 35 and 36, but really 35 and 36 were envelopes with swabs in them. But they didn't need placard numbers, so when I went to grab the next placard in line, I was grabbing the other one. If I had put those placards on the swabs, as I did the swab envelopes and just put it on the envelope, then they wouldn't have been there, and I wouldn't have gotten so messed up in my numbering with those first few items because I had forgotten that I had given item numbers to the swabs.
So when you recognize that mistake, you documented your correction of that.
Yes, because that's practically the only way to document it.
Was there anything about that misnumbering that altered the nature or state of the evidence?
No.
Just only its cataloging number, right?
Yes.
And tell us the process by which you went to develop potential latent fingerprint evidence from each of these items.
What I did was, I looked around them first to see if I could see anything that looked like a print. And then I processed it with black fingerprint powder and a brush. And the same on both of those.
And were you able to take any lifts from those items?
Yes, I'm reading again, and I took 2 lifts from the coffee cup and 1 lift from the water bottle.
Can you tell us again what, describe for us what a lift is?
A lift is once you put powder on the item, and you put the fingerprint tape on top of it, and then you take that tape off and put it down on a card, and we call that a lift. And that card now is the lift.
And did you put that into evidence somehow?
Yes, I did.
And how did you do that?
It would have gone into an envelope and then gone into evidence.
Similar to exhibit number 160?
Yes,
Is that the envelope you would have put them in?
yes.
Okay. Is there any prohibition or rule against putting those latent lift cards from two separate items in a single envelope?
Oh, no.
Is there any chance of altering those fingerprints if they were in the same envelope together?
No, they're both taped down on cards separately.
Did you process those items also or that item also for potential DNA?
Yes,
And did you use that same process you described earlier with the other swabs?
yes, in this case, yes, it'd be a DNA swab kit, and we focus it on the areas of the item that could potentially have DNA on them.
And what area would that be?
On the coffee cup, it would have been around the area where somebody's mouth would have drank out of the top of the cup. And on the handle, if there was one, I don't remember now. And on the glass, it would have been around that sort of ridge at the top that the bottle cap screws onto.
Did you package those in the same process after swabbing them and put them into evidence?
Yes,
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 160, what is that?
that's the swab for the coffee cups, the mouth area of the coffee cup.
Okay. And you did the same for the bottle, correct?
Yes,
So Exhibit number 162 is what?
the latent lift from the bottle, the fingerprint.
Did you also attempt to document other items that were in the car in other areas?
Yes,
Showing you Exhibit number 163. What is that?
item number 44, a video camera.
That's similar. That's the same one in Exhibit 164, correct?
Exhibit 164
Is the one now,
is
yeah.
a photo.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to skip down to 166. Do you recognize this item?
Yes,
And how do you recognize it?
I took that photo.
You took that photo?
Yes.
And what is it of?
It's of checks and a checkbook.
And where was that located, do you recall?
I don't.
Would it refresh your recollection to refer to your notes? If
Yes.
you notated it?
Yes.
With the court's permission?
Sure.
Thank you. It's item number 45.
And where did it come from?
It was in the pocket on the back of the front passenger seat. Like if you were sitting in the back seat, you could reach into that pocket.
So I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit number 575. And I have you open these. Do you have a pair of gloves?
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling these items were processed with some sticky black powder by someone else.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to get your hands dirty. What would that sticky black powder commonly be?
Fingerprint powder.
Okay. So contained within the envelope 575 is another envelope 575 A. Can you unfold that envelope and tell me if you recognize first that envelope?
I do.
And how do you recognize it?
It's the envelope that I created originally to put this item into.
Okay. I'm going to, if you want to grab the items that are in there. I'm going to put this on the overhead real quick, Mr. Jackson. Give it an overhead. And now you've removed the contents of that. Can you please tell the jury what you're holding in your hand as Exhibit 575A-1?
It looks like a sort of a checkbook cover, sort of like a checkbook folder, but in this case, I guess checkbook cover. And there are also some business cards in there. And
Bound by a binder clip?
yes, with a binder clip on it, and a different
It appears that each of those have a court exhibit tag on them.
Yes.
Okay. And then that appears to be A35. Oh, let's see, hold on. Tell me if I'm incorrect. Does that appear to be an A20
Yes.
through A35?
Yes.
Okay.
And then there are, I think these are all just paper, carbon duplicate copies, checks.
I'm going to steal one of your gloves if I may.
Sure.
Not being a scientist person and not wanting to get my hands dirty.
Yeah, that.
You said they're carbon copies of checks?
Yes.
Okay. And these are labeled 575A4 through A19?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to put these up on the overhead for a moment so we can see them. The first one we're displaying is a carbon copy of check 1103. Is that right? That's what's being shown?
Yes.
And 1104.
Yes.
1105.
Yes.
1106.
Yes.
1107.
Yes.
1108.
Yes.
And 1109.
Yes.
1110.
Yes.
These all appear to be from the end of December of 2009. Is that right? The dates that were written on them?
Yes.
1111.
Yes.
1112.
Yes.
Now we're into January of 2009.
Yes.
1113.
Yes.
1114.
Yes.
1115.
Yes.
We're now at the end of January at 128 of 10. Is that correct?
Yes.
1116.
Yes.
And that's on February 1st of 2010.
Yes.
1117
Yes.
on February 2nd, correct?
Yes.
1118.
Yes.
All, those last two were on February 2nd, correct?
Yes.
If I may. If you wouldn't mind putting those back in the envelopes from which they came for me.
Right.
Mr. Jackson, put it back to attorney, please.
I don't recall, was it in my envelope and then in their envelope?
I believe it was, yes. We can backtrack to the exhibit numbers because they were numbered sequentially, so.
A is mine, 575 is Sanders.
The envelopes.
Yes.
Things never seem to go back in the way you took them out, right? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. showing you exhibit 166, again back on the screen. There's a business card that you photographed along with those checks, correct?
Yes,
And that was to the Union Bank of California in San Clemente?
yes,
Does that business card indicate a telephone number of 949-492-8090?
yes it does.
So then I'm going to show you exhibit number 167. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
And what are we showing here? Placard 46?
yes,
Is it an item found there?
it is.
Would it be, what's it shown in exhibit 168?
Yes,
That was just found on the ground of the back of the trooper?
that was found after we rolled the seats. The back seats can fold down and roll up, and it was found after we did that.
So would it have originally, when you went into the vehicle, kind of been obscured by the seats?
Yes,
Did you photograph the reverse of that card?
I don't recall.
Exhibit number 169?
Yes,
Is that the reverse of the card, or is that another piece that was found in the car?
it's the same item number 46. If it's 46 for the other photo, then this is the other side of 46.
Okay. Exhibit number 170, do you recognize the items depicted here?
Yes,
And what is that?
children's items from the rear passenger, left side, driver's side of the vehicle.
171,
Yes, just closer.
172, what is that?
Children's items from the rear passenger, right side of the vehicle.
Okay. That would include, when you said children's items, you include like a car seat and other items, right?
Yes,
That case in the upper left, or container, that has a blue lid next to it,
yes,
you inventoried those items as well, correct?
yes,
Exhibit number 173, are those the items?
yes,
And you laid them out, I take it.
I did.
Exhibit number 174, is that them?
Yes,
175, what is that?
that was part of what was in there also.
Is that a close-up of the prescription receipt?
Yes,
176, is that a close-up of the bottles from that container,
yes,
or some of them?
yes,
We noticed in the back of the vehicle, when you had the doors open, it took a picture, there seemed to be a whole bunch of items that were covered with like a white sheet, is that correct?
yes.
Do you remember what those were?
I believe it was a children's size, like little wooden refrigerator and a little wooden sink.
Exhibit number 177,
Yes,
are those some of the items removed from the back of the vehicle?
yes,
And 178,
yes.
last but not least, two exhibits, 179, is that a close-up of that same registration card we talked about a few minutes ago?
Yes,
And 180, is that a copy of the insurance certificate that was taken out of the glove box?
yes,
All of these items were collected and inventoried and put into evidence?
yes, they were.
I want to direct your attention back to, in addition to putting those items in evidence, were there some items you took from the house that were also put into evidence?
Before you go to the house, could you go back to exhibit 161? I'm not sure if you covered that with her or I just.
That's 160.
There it is, 161. We'll cover it real quick for the judge to make sure we did. You recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
It is a DNA swab kit from the mouth area of the middle coffee cup.
Okay. And you collected that consistent as you described before, demonstrated in court, and according to your training and experience?
Yes.
Did I miss any others, Your Honor?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So back to the house on the 19th. Did you collect some items of evidence and book them into evidence?
Yes.
Specifically, I wanted to ask you, do you recall collecting cameras?
Yes.
You remember how many from the house?
I think there was about 6 cameras.
Okay. Do you remember collecting old, or what appeared to be old cell phones?
Yes.
Do you remember how many?
Probably 4.
Did you also collect and put into evidence several computers?
Yes.
Specifically, do you recall booking into evidence an E-Machine computer tower model T2040?
Yes, there were 2 desktops, I remember, but I don't remember. I remember one was an E-Machines, but I don't know the...
Would it refresh your recollection to look at the evidence property sheet that you generated for that?
Yes, or I have it here on my report.
Please, with the court's permission.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, the E-Machine model T2040, is that what you said?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that booked into evidence under property tag number 11074310, if my reading is correct?
Let's see. (4310), yes.
Okay. Each of the DNA kits were then also placed into evidence with similar property tag numbers?
Yes.
And would that be tag numbers 11074337 through 342 inclusively?
Yes.
And then the swab kit from the coffee cup would have been tag number 11074345?
Yes.
Say that number again, 43?
45.
Thank you.
And from the water bottle, 11074348.
Yes.
And those items would have been kept in secured San Diego evidence storage until transferred to the FBI.
Yes.
What is the purpose of giving things an evidence tag number like that?
They can actually track it its whole time, from the time that I put it into property and evidence. If I put something in there with the intention that a DNA person is going to look at that DNA swab, then that will be scanned again when they check it out, and it will have their name and how many days they had it, and then they put it back in, it's back in property evidence. And if somebody else wanted to look at it, it would be scanned again. So it's a really good way of tracking everything.
By the way, I happened to take a second look at your resume of your training experience that you sent us.
Yes.
You've taken some classes here in San Bernardino County, right?
I won. I think they suitcased that class down to our crime lab.
Oh, okay, they brought it to you.
Yes.
And what class was that?
It was advanced blood-stain pattern documentation.
And do you remember
Look at my,
do you remember who one of the instructors of that class was?
It was Greg Ogino and Randall Beasy.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Nothing further.
Well, we'll take our morning recess this time in 15 minutes. Keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinion about the case, not to discuss the case, or allow anyone to discuss the case with you or in your presence. Again, that means not discussing about the case, neither witnesses, testimony, exhibits, parties, attorneys, witnesses, or anyone else. And we'll see everyone back in about 15 minutes.